You're staring at the gate again, aren't you? Elena's voice crackles through my Bluetooth earpiece. Is it that obvious? I ask, my thumb tracing the embossed lettering on the heavy cardstock invitation. Marcus, you don't have to do this. We have a board meeting in 12 hours. You could just turn around. He wrote my name out on the envelope. So, one stroke of a pen doesn't erase 5 years of silence. I sigh, the cold night air biting at my cheeks. The iron bars of the Chen estate loom over me like the teeth of a trap. I know. But if I don't go in, I'll always wonder why he sent it. Fine, she says, her voice softening. But if Victor or Diana start their usual crap, you leave. Promise me? I promise. I mean it, Marcus. You built a life. A real one. Don't let them burn it down for fun again. I'm not the same kid who left with a backpack, Elena. I'll be fine. I hang up. The guard at the gatehouse leans out, squinting through the glass. Can I help you, sir? This is a private. He stops mid-sentence. His jaw drops slightly. Mr. Marcus? Is that you? Hello, Arthur. It's been a very long while. 5 years, sir. We weren't sure you'd actually come tonight. Neither was I. Open the gate, Arthur. The heavy iron groan of the gate's opening sounds like a warning. I drive the modest car I bought with my own money up the winding path. The mansion sits on the hill, a monolith of marble and glass, glowing with the artificial warmth of 100 chandeliers. I remember the night I left. The rain had been cold. Victor had smirked while Father threw my things into the mud. A thief doesn't deserve the Chen name, Father had roared. I hadn't stolen the money. I knew Victor had moved the funds to frame me, but the evidence was too perfect, the lies too polished. I had walked away into the dark, leaving behind a legacy I thought I wanted. I reach the front doors. They swing open before I can reach for the heavy handle. Welcome home, Master Marcus, a familiar voice says. It's Mrs. Halloway, the head housekeeper. She looks smaller, her hair a shock of silver. Just Marcus, Mrs. Halloway? Please, I insist. Your father is in the ballroom. He's been expecting you. Has he? He's been checking the guest list every hour since the RSVPs closed. My heart hammers against my ribs. A desperate hope flares up in my chest. Maybe the handwriting on the envelope meant something. Maybe he finally realized the truth. I step into the grand foyer. The smell of expensive lilies and floor wax hits me like a physical blow. Well, look what the cat dragged in from the gutters. I freeze. Victor stands at the top of the marble staircase, a crystal glass of scotch in his hand. He hasn't changed. Same tailored suit. The same arrogant, predatory tilt of the head. Hello, Victor, I say, keeping my voice level. I told Diana you'd show up. Poverty makes people desperate, doesn't it? I'm not desperate, Victor. No? Then why are you here? Looking for a handout? Or did your little tech startup finally run out of steam? We're doing well. Better than your last real estate venture, if the news is true. Victor's grip tightens on his glass. Careful, Marcus. You're a guest here. Barely. I was invited. By Father. Personally. Victor laughs, a sharp, jagged sound that echoes off the vaulted ceilings. You think that invitation meant anything? He just wanted to see if you'd crawl back. He wanted a front row seat to your failure. Is he here? I ask, looking past him toward the ballroom. He's busy being the guest of honor, Victor says, slowly descending the stairs. But I'm here. And I've missed our little chats. We have so much to catch up on. He stops just a foot away from me. He leans in, smelling of expensive peat and pure malice. Don't get comfortable, he whispers. You're still the outsider. And I'm still the one who can ruin you with a single phone call. Did you really think 5 years would change who owns this house? I don't even blink. I look him straight in the eye. I don't care about the house, Victor. He smiles. It is the same smile he wore the night he framed me. It was the smile of a man who thinks he's already won. We'll see about that. Dinner is served in 10 minutes. Try not to use the wrong fork. It would be so embarrassing to have to kick you out twice. I should have burned it while I still had the chance. The ballroom looked exactly the way I remembered it. Too big. Too bright. Too hollow. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across 100 unfamiliar faces, all of them laughing at jokes I hadn't heard, celebrating a man I barely recognized anymore. The catering staff moved like ghosts between the guests, silver trays balanced perfectly, expressions perfectly blank. I knew how they felt. You came. Diana appeared at my left shoulder like she'd materialized from the air itself. She was dressed in deep burgundy, her dark hair pinned back with precision, looking every inch the devoted daughter. "Diana," I said simply. Her eyes swept down my suit and back up with surgical efficiency. "Is that off the rack?" "It's Italian wool, actually." Mm. She smiled, the kind of smile that never touched her eyes. "I suppose budgets are tight when your little startup is still finding its footing. What do you call it again?" "Something very ambitious." "Vertex Solutions. We cleared $2 million in revenue last quarter." "How adorable." She plucked a champagne flute from a passing tray. "We made that before breakfast on Tuesday. But still, you must be very proud." I spotted my escape route across the room and started moving toward it. She followed. "I was genuinely surprised when Father sent your invitation," she said conversationally. "I told Victor it was a mistake. That you'd either not show up or worse that you would." "Which outcome were you hoping for?" She laughed softly. "Honestly, either one would have been entertaining." Then Victor's voice boomed from somewhere behind me, loud enough to carry across the entire room. I turned to find him holding court near the bar with 4 older men in suits I recognized as Father's business associates. "Marcus always had trouble with commitment," Victor was saying, swirling his drink with casual authority. "When the family needed him most, he simply disappeared. Very difficult period for all of us." Father was heartbroken. Several heads turned to look at me. I held myself very still. "Don't let them see you bleed." Elena's voice in my head, steady and clear. I breathed through it. I smiled at no one in particular and turned away from Victor's performance. Father stood near the far wall. I almost didn't recognize him. He was thinner than I remembered, his shoulders carrying a slight curve they hadn't had before. His face was creased with lines that hadn't existed 5 years ago. He was laughing at something a business partner was saying, but even from this distance the laugh looked like effort. He was 60 years old tonight. He looked older. I waited. Just for a moment. Just to see if he'd look up and notice me standing there. He didn't. The pain of that landed somewhere deep, in a place I thought I had carefully sealed shut. I turned before it could show on my face and walked away from the ballroom entirely. The side corridor was quiet. Cool. My footsteps echoed against the stone tiles as I followed the familiar path I'd walked hundreds of times as a child, pushing open the heavy wooden door that led to the garden. My mother's garden. She had planted everything herself. Roses and jasmine and small lantern lights strung between the trellises. The estate staff had maintained it faithfully for 10 years since her death, keeping it exactly as she'd left it. I stood in the center of it and breathed for the first time since arriving. "I wondered if you'd find your way here." I spun around. Uncle Thomas sat on the stone bench near the far trellis, a glass of wine resting on his knee. My father's younger brother was 62, rounder, kinder, with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead and genuine warmth in his expression. "Uncle Thomas." The relief in my voice surprised me. "I didn't know you were coming. I wouldn't have missed it." He stood slowly and embraced me properly, firmly, like I actually mattered. "Let me look at you. You look well, Marcus." "Really? You don't have to say that." "I mean it." He pulled back, studying my face. "Elena keeping you honest?" "Every single day." He smiled, then grew serious. He glanced back toward the lit windows of the ballroom and lowered his voice. "I'm glad you're here tonight, though I want you to be careful. This evening isn't entirely what it appears to be." "What does that mean?" "It means there are things being decided tonight that affect everyone in this family. Including you." He paused. "Especially you." "Thomas, just tell me." "Marcus." Diana's voice cut through the garden like a blade. She stood at the doorway, arms folded, expression carrying something new. Not amusement this time. Satisfaction. "Father is making his announcement in 20 minutes, she said. "You might want to come back inside." "What announcement?" I asked. She tilted her head and smiled slowly, savoring every syllable. "He's signing the official paperwork tonight. In front of everyone. Victor becomes sole heir to everything. The company. The estate. All of it. Legally final by midnight." The garden felt very quiet. "I thought you should hear it from family first," she added. "As a courtesy." She disappeared back inside. I stood in my mother's garden, surrounded by roses she'd planted with her own hands, and felt every fragile thread of hope I'd carried through those gates quietly snap. I picked up my car keys. I was leaving. I made it as far as the main hall. "Marcus, there he is." Victor's voice exploded across the marble foyer like a gunshot. I stopped walking. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to keep moving, to push through the front doors, to never look back. Instead, I turned around. Victor stood at the ballroom entrance, gesturing toward me with his champagne glass like I was an exhibit he was presenting. 30, maybe 40 guests had drifted into the hall behind him, drawn by the noise and the promise of spectacle. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victor announced, his voice carrying the warm, practiced tone of a man who enjoyed audiences, "most of you know my brother Marcus. The prodigal son finally returned." Polite, uncertain laughter rippled through the crowd. "Victor," I said quietly, "don't do this." "Don't do what?" "Welcome you home." He spread his arms wide, the performance fully underway. "I'm grateful you came tonight, Marcus. Genuinely. It takes real nerve to walk back through these doors after everything." "After everything," I repeated carefully. "You left us," he said, his voice dropping into something resembling sorrow. "Father's business was struggling. The family needed unity. And you just walked away. Middle of the night. No explanation. Nothing. That's not what happened." "Then what happened?" he asked pleasantly, tilting his head. "Because from where I stood, my father spent 3 months trying to call you. 3 months, Marcus. Do you know what that did to him?" The guests were very quiet now. I looked around the room. Unfamiliar faces watching me with polite pity. A few with thinly veiled amusement. Rich people who smelled drama the way sharks smell blood. Then Diana moved through the crowd, pressing a folded handkerchief against the corner of her eye with elegant precision. "I don't like to talk about this," she said softly, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Growing up with Marcus was difficult. We tried so hard to be a real family. All 3 of us. But there was always this distance from him. This coldness. Like we were never quite good enough for him." Someone near the back murmured something sympathetic. "We never stopped loving him," Diana continued, her voice cracking beautifully on cue. "Even when he stopped loving us. The walls were closing in. I felt it physically, the way the air thickened, the way the whispers multiplied, the way my face burned despite every effort to keep it neutral. This was orchestrated. Every word, every tear, every perfectly timed pause. They had rehearsed this." I looked across the room to where my father sat in a high-backed chair near the fireplace, a glass of water untouched on the table beside him. He was watching. He said nothing. That silence was worse than anything Victor or Diana had said. Worse than the whispers. Worse than the laughter I'd heard moments ago. He sat there and he watched his children eviscerate me in front of his guests, and he said absolutely nothing. Something broke loose inside me. Not anger. Something quieter than anger. Something final. I turned back to Victor, and when I spoke, my voice shook slightly but held. "You want to tell them the story? Fine. Tell it. Tell them every version you've polished over 5 years. Tell them about the missing funds. Tell them about the evidence that appeared overnight. Tell them everything, Victor." Victor's expression flickered for just a fraction of a second. "Tell them," I continued, stepping forward, "how hard the 2 of you worked. Not for this family. Not for father. But for yourselves. Every lie, every setup, every fake tear Diana's performing right now. You can have it all." The room had gone absolutely silent. The money. The company. The estate. The name. My voice steadied as I spoke. "I don't want any of it. I never needed it. I built something real with people who are worth 1,000 of you, and I did it without a single dollar of chin money." I turned to the room. "Enjoy your party." I turned toward the front doors. My hand was 3 inches from the door handle. "Nobody leaves." The voice filled the entire hall like a crack of thunder rolling through stone corridors. Absolute. The voice of a man who had once commanded boardrooms and broken contracts with a word. My father's voice. I stopped. Every single person in that room stopped. I heard the slow, deliberate sound of his chair scraping against the floor as he stood. The effort it cost him was audible in the room's complete silence. "This party is not over," he said. "And I have an announcement to make." Victor straightened immediately beside me. I could feel it without looking at him, the way he stood taller, the way his shoulders rolled back. His coronation. His moment. 5 years of patience finally paying out. I didn't turn around. I kept my eyes on the front door and told myself it didn't matter. That I didn't care what he announced. That Victor could have every brick of this house and every dollar in every account, and it would not touch the life I'd built. I told myself that. Then my father spoke again. "Marcus." Just my name. 1 word. I turned despite myself. He was standing at the center of the room, frielier than I'd realized, one hand gripping the arm of his chair for balance. The guests parted instinctively around him, creating a clear line of sight between us across the entire length of the hall. His eyes found mine. and I saw them. Tears. Real ones. Not Diana's practiced performance. Not Victor's calculated sentiment. Something raw and ashamed and desperate looking back at me from a face I hadn't let myself miss until this exact moment. Victor's smile was already forming, triumphant and wide. He had no idea what was coming. Neither did I. "Mr. Webb," my father said. "Please bring it forward." The crowd parted again. Harold Webb moved through the guests with the careful, deliberate steps of a man carrying something fragile. He was in his late 70s, silver-haired, wearing a dark suit that looked like it belonged to a more serious occasion than a birthday party. In his hands was a manila envelope, thick and sealed, bound with a red ribbon that had faded with age. Victor hadn't moved. I could feel him beside me, still wearing his smile, still waiting for his moment. I watched Mr. Webb hand the envelope to my father with both hands, like an offering. My father took it. His fingers trembled. "Most of you know me as a practical man," Father began, his voice filling the silent room. "I don't make speeches. I don't apologize. I don't look backward." He paused. "I have been a fool for 10 years. Nobody laughed. Nobody whispered. Before my wife Grace passed," he continued, "she gave this envelope to Harold. She made me promise, made me swear on her hand while she was still in that hospital bed, that I would not open it until my 60th birthday. His jaw tightened. "I kept that promise. Even when it nearly destroyed me to do it." He looked down at the envelope. "I opened this last week." The silence in the room shifted into something heavier. "She wrote to me," my father said. "I'm going to read it to you. All of it. Because I am done keeping things in this family that should have been spoken out loud years ago." He broke the seal. The paper unfolded with a dry, delicate sound that seemed impossibly loud in the stillness. He cleared his throat once. Then my mother's voice came out of my father's mouth, and I forgot how to stand properly. "My darling Richard, if you're reading this, you've kept your promise and you've reached 60. I always believed you would. You were always stronger than you knew." I pressed my hand against the wall beside me. "I need to tell you things I was too frightened to say while I was alive. About our family. About our children. All 3 of them." Victor made a small sound. I didn't look at him. "Marcus came to us small and frightened and brave all at once. You remember the night we brought him home. He fell asleep holding my hand. I loved him from that moment completely, the way you love something that was always meant to be yours. He is our son, Richard. He has always been our son." My throat closed entirely. I am afraid for him. Victor and Diana are talented and charming and I love them, but I have watched them for years now and I am frightened by what I see. The way they speak about Marcus when they think I cannot hear. The way things disappear and Marcus is blamed. The way they smile at each other when he is in trouble. Diana made a sharp sound behind me. I turned slightly. She had both hands pressed over her mouth, her eyes wide and streaming with tears that looked nothing like the ones she'd been performing 20 minutes ago. "I cannot prove what I suspect. But I beg you, Richard. Watch carefully. See the truth before it is too late. Protect him. You are the only one who can." My father's voice broke on the last word. He stopped reading. The room gave him the silence he needed. He found it again. "I have made arrangements. Harold knows everything. There is a separate account, built quietly over 15 years from my personal inheritance from my own parents. It belongs to Marcus. Only Marcus. Harold will manage it until it is time. And the house. My mother's house in Carver's Point. I know you think it was sold, Richard. It was not. I could not let it go. I want Marcus to have it. I want him to have somewhere in this world that is entirely, permanently his. Somewhere nobody can take from him. Tell him I loved him. Tell him every day I was proud of him. Tell him his mother never stopped believing in him for a single moment. Love always. Grace." The room erupted. Not in applause. In the uncontrolled, cascading sound of 40 people whispering at once, a wave of shock breaking across the ballroom that I heard only distantly, like sound traveling through water. Victor's champagne glass was empty in his hand. His face had gone the color of old ash. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't look at anyone. My father refolded the letter slowly, carefully, like it was something sacred. Then he walked toward me. He was slower than I remembered. His hand gripped Mr. Webb's arm briefly for support before releasing it. Each step across the marble floor seemed to cost him something real. He stopped in front of me. Up close he looked devastated. Not the cultivated devastation of someone performing grief, but the genuine wreckage of a man who had finally understood something too late and was standing fully inside that knowledge. "I failed you," he said quietly. "Not for the room. For me. I chose convenience over truth. I believed what was easy to believe because the alternative meant admitting how badly I had already let you down. His voice fractured. I let your mother down. I let you down. I'm sorry, Marcus. I am deeply, completely sorry. I couldn't speak. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a small wooden box, the kind that might hold a piece of jewelry. He held it out with both hands. I opened it. A key. Old brass, worn smooth, attached to a simple ring. I recognized the shape of it immediately and couldn't understand why until the memory arrived like a physical blow. My mother's hand closing mine around a similar key on a summer afternoon. This house has good bones, Marcus. Like you. She never sold it, I whispered. Never, my father confirmed. It has been maintained and waiting. For you. For as long as you want it. I closed my fingers around the key. My hand was shaking. Behind my father, across the silent room, I could see Victor standing completely still, the smile finally completely gone. Mr. Webb stepped forward and quietly cleared his throat. There is one additional matter, he said, regarding the inheritance account. He paused deliberately. The current balance, with 15 years of growth, is $4.3 million. The room went silent all over again. Victor moved first. This is fraud. His voice cut through the stunned silence like broken glass, sharp and ugly and desperate. He stepped forward, pointing at Mr. Webb with a finger that wasn't quite steady. That letter is fabricated. My mother was on medication for 3 months before she died. She wasn't coherent. She wasn't capable of making legal arrangements. Victor, my father began. No. Victor's voice climbed higher, the polished performance finally cracking open to reveal what lived underneath. No, I won't stand here and watch this happen. This is my family's legacy. This is my company. Some letter that conveniently appears on your birthday after 10 years. He laughed, the sound ragged and wrong. I want a legal investigation. Tonight. I want every document verified. Mr. Webb regarded him with the unruffled patience of a man who had anticipated this exact moment. Mr. Chin, he said calmly, opening the leather briefcase that Arthur had quietly placed beside him, I anticipated your concerns. Mrs. Grace Chin established this trust 11 years ago, 3 years before her illness progressed. Every document is notarized, witnessed, and filed with the state. I have copies here, copies with my firm, and copies in a secure digital repository. He set a bound file on the table beside him. You're welcome to investigate. I'd encourage it. Victor stared at the file. The color drained from his face in real time. I watched it happen. This isn't over, he said quietly to no one in particular. Then Diana moved. She crossed the room in 3 quick steps and dropped to her knees in front of me. The movement was so sudden that the guests nearest to us stepped back involuntarily. Her hands found mine before I could pull away, and she looked up at me with streaming eyes and an expression of complete collapse. Marcus, she whispered. Marcus, please. I need you to hear me. I looked down at her. I didn't want to, she said, her voice breaking beautifully. I want you to know that. Victor planned everything. The missing funds, the evidence, all of it. I was 19 years old and I was terrified of him. I didn't know how to stop it. She tightened her grip on my hands. I have hated myself every single day. Please. You're my brother. You're still my brother. The room watched. I thought about the night my father threw my things into the rain. I thought about Diana standing in the doorway above the stairs, watching, saying nothing. I thought about her voice at the dinner table, casual and precise. He's signing the official paperwork tonight. As a courtesy, I gently removed my hands from hers. I said nothing. Silence was the only honest response I had left. My father spoke from behind me. There is a second matter. Diana rose slowly from the floor. The room rearranged itself again, everyone turning toward my father with the helpless gravitational pull of people watching something enormous and inevitable. I am 60 years old tonight, father said. And I have spent the last month looking very carefully at my own company. His voice was controlled now, the trembling gone, replaced with something harder. What I found was not what I expected to find. He nodded once toward the doorway. James Holloway, the estate security chief, a broad-shouldered man I remembered from childhood as permanently silent and permanently watchful, walked into the room carrying a document folder in one hand and a small recording device in the other. Over the past 4 years, my father continued, approximately $2.8 million has moved through shell accounts connected to this family's business. Accounts I did not authorize. Transfers I did not approve. He paused. James? James set the folder open on the table beside Mr. Webb's documents and pressed play on the recording device. Victor's voice filled the room. Move the remaining amount before the quarterly audit. Richard won't look closely enough. He never does anymore. Another voice, one I didn't recognize. And when you're named heir? What happens to the old man's shares? Victor's recorded voice, smooth and certain. Diluted. Legally. He'll have a title and no power. It's cleaner that way. James stopped the recording. The ballroom had become a vacuum. No whispers. No movement. 40 people holding completely still. Victor turned toward the main doors. He moved fast. I'll give him that. 3 steps, maybe 4, before 2 of James's staff materialized from positions near the wall and simply stood in his path, blocking the exit with the calm efficiency of people who had been placed there specifically for this moment. Victor stopped. He turned back to the room slowly. Something in his face had finished. The charm, the confidence, the carefully maintained performance of a beloved son and trusted heir. All of it simply gone, leaving something smaller and colder behind. You'll never make this public, he said to my father. The scandal alone. I've already contacted the appropriate authorities, father said quietly. James will assist you in cooperating with their questions. Victor looked at me then. Directly at me for the first time all evening as an equal rather than a target. He said nothing. He let James's staff guide him toward the side room without another word, which was somehow worse than anything he could have said. Diana watched him go. Then she turned back to the room and I saw the calculation happen behind her eyes. The rapid assessment of remaining options, of angles still available, of exits not yet closed. It took less than 3 seconds. I need everyone to understand something, she said loudly, her voice climbing to reach the entire room. Marcus was not innocent in all of this. I have documentation. There were threats. When we were younger Diana. Uncle Thomas's voice came from the far side of the room. He stepped forward through the gathered guests with his reading glasses still pushed up on his forehead, his wine glass set aside somewhere, his hands empty. He looked tired. Not the tiredness of a long evening, but the deep, cellular exhaustion of someone who had been carrying something very heavy for a very long time. I have been quiet in this family for 22 years, he said. I told myself it was to keep the peace. That it wasn't my place. That things would correct themselves eventually. He looked at Diana steadily. I was a coward and I am ashamed of it. He reached into his jacket and produced a small leather notebook. I kept records. Starting when Marcus was 14 years old. Conversations I witnessed. Plans Diana discussed with Victor in my presence, believing I was trustworthy or simply not important enough to matter. He held the notebook up. Every date. Every detail. Every lie. Diana stared at the notebook. The threat documentation you're referencing, Thomas continued, was fabricated in March 9 years ago. I was in the next room when you and Victor discussed how to create it. He paused. I wrote it down that same evening. Diana's mouth opened. Nothing came out. She looked around the room at 40 faces that had watched her perform grief and loyalty and fear all evening long, and she finally understood that the audience had been paying very close attention. She sat down heavily in the nearest chair. And stayed there. The last guest left somewhere around 4 in the morning. I watched the catering staff fold the white tablecloths in silence, their movements efficient and indifferent, clearing away the wreckage of the evening like it was simply another job. The chandeliers had been dimmed. The flowers were wilting in their arrangements. The birthday cake sat untouched on a side table, one candle still standing. My father found me in my mother's garden. He lowered himself onto the stone bench beside me slowly, without asking permission, without speaking first. We sat together in the pre-dawn dark and listened to the garden breathe around us while the sky moved almost imperceptibly from black to a deep, bruised blue. He spoke first. She planted the jasmine the spring after we brought you home, he said quietly. You probably don't remember. You were 4. I remember the smell, I said. I always thought it was just what home smelled like. He nodded slowly. When she died I couldn't come out here for almost 2 years. And then I came out here too much. Sitting in the dark, talking to someone who wasn't there anymore. He pressed his hands together between his knees. Victor found me out here one night. He sat with me for hours. He was so attentive. So present. His voice thinned. I was so desperate for it that I didn't ask myself why. You were grieving, I said. I was weak, he corrected quietly. And I chose to fill the emptiness with whatever was offered rather than face the truth of what I was losing. He turned to look at me directly. I lost you long before you walked out that door. I had been losing you for years. And I let it happen. I didn't reassure him. He wasn't asking to be reassured. I'm not going to ask your forgiveness, he continued. I don't deserve to ask for it. What I did, what I allowed to happen to you in my own house under my own name. He stopped, steadied himself. I just want you to know that I know. I understand what it cost you. And if you walk away from here tonight and never come back, I will understand that too. The sky was changing above the jasmine trellises. The first pale suggestion of morning laying itself carefully along the edge of the dark. I reached into my pocket and closed my hand around the brass key. I thought about my mother writing that letter in secret, protecting me across a decade of silence, hiding a house and a fortune and her love somewhere safe where no one could reach it or ruin it. I thought about Elena answering the phone at 2 a.m. during the first year, when the startup was hemorrhaging money and I was sleeping on a pull-out sofa and genuinely unsure if I had made the worst decision of my life. You're still here, she'd said simply. That means you're still winning. I thought about the boy who had stood on this estate's driveway in the rain with a backpack and nowhere specific to go. He had survived. He had done more than survive. I finally spoke. I can't forget what happened. I want to be honest with you about that. I can't pretend the last 5 years didn't happen, or the years before them. I know, my father said. But I'm tired of carrying it as the defining thing about my life. I turned to look at him. He looked very old in the pre-dawn light, and very small and entirely without armor. I'm willing to try. Building something. Whatever that looks like. It'll be slow and it won't be easy and I can't promise you where it ends. My father put his face in his hands. The sound he made was not something I had words for. It was the sound of a man setting down something extraordinarily heavy after an extraordinarily long time. His shoulders shook. He wept without any attempt to stop or conceal it. I put my hand on his back and left it there. We stayed in the garden until the sun came fully up. My mother's childhood home was a 40-minute drive from the estate. It sat on a quiet street in Carver's Point, a small white house with blue shutters and an oak tree in the front yard that had grown much larger than the photographs suggested it once was. Mr. Webb had given me the address. The key fit the lock on the first try. Inside, it smelled like cedar and old paper and something faintly floral I couldn't identify. The estate staff had maintained it faithfully. Clean surfaces. Fresh air through a cracked window. Her photographs arranged on the walls and shelves exactly as she had left them. My mother at 20, laughing at something outside the camera's frame. My mother at her wedding, caught mid-turn. My mother holding a small child I recognized after a moment as me. I stood in the center of the room for a long time. The desk in the corner was small and simple. A reading lamp. A ceramic mug holding pens. A shallow drawer that stuck slightly when I pulled it. Inside the drawer was an envelope. My name on the front. Her handwriting. I sat in her chair and opened it. My darling Marcus. If you're reading this, you survived. I always knew you would. You are stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and more loved than I ever found the right words to tell you properly. Live the life they tried to steal from you. Every beautiful, complicated, imperfect piece of it. I love you forever. Not a moment less. Mom? I sat in her chair. And I finally, completely let myself cry. When there was nothing left, I took out my phone. Elena answered on the second ring. Marcus? It's 6 a.m. Are you okay? I'm okay, I said, and meant it entirely. I'm ready to come home. Finally, she said softly. I'll put the kettle on.